No one should have to grow up neglected. And it's common for children to blame themselves for their parents' inability to give them love and stability. Once you're an adult, this form of kind of magical thinking can ruin your life. You find yourself getting into relationships with totally unworkable partners, but believing that you are maybe making them treat you badly. And you don't leave, and then they keep treating you badly, and you still don't leave, and they keep treating you badly. And because it's so easy to make you think that everything's your fault. And I mean, it's tempting to believe it's your fault, because if it is, then it means that maybe by some miracle you can make everything better. But in the kind of relationship I'm talking about, the partner is no good, and they just want to keep getting whatever they get out of your allegiance to them. They don't even have to gaslight you, because you'll do it to yourself. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Delia, and she writes, "Hey Anna, I'm writing to you from a place of deep grief. My relationship of 2.5 years ended this summer, and now that the dust has settled from moving my entire life back to my home state, I'm reckoning with the fact that I played a much bigger part in the relationship's demise than I previously realized." All right, I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things that I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's go through the letter and see what's going on for Delia. Joe and I started dating long distance when I was 27 and he was 29. When we first started talking, I felt frozen and uncomfortable a lot. I was afraid to speak freely, and I felt anxious and worried about saying the wrong thing that might make him lose interest. There were red flags I noticed about him. He had struggled with addiction for most of his 20s. He had just gotten clean and out of a long-term relationship weeks before we started chatting, and was talking to a handful of other girls when we first met. I took his transparency about all this as a good sign and attributed my feelings of apprehension to my anxious attachment, because I know how triggering relationships can be for me. After all, he seemed to be a mature guy with a good head on his shoulders. He had a good job while building a business on the side. He was secure, authentic, and incredibly funny and intelligent. The feeling never really went away, though. In fact, it grew more intense as our relationship developed. The stakes felt higher the more I fell in love. We did have a very special bond. It was playful, tender, affectionate, creative, reciprocal, and full of friendship. I felt like I could be my true goofy self with him, but I was constantly paranoid that he was going to lose interest and leave me for someone else. I could never really accept it fully when he would tell me he loved me, even though I knew he sincerely did. I simply didn't feel good enough for him. Ironically, this choked off our connection and pushed him away. I often expressed these feelings of insecurity and needed a lot of reassurance, and I think the relationship grew heavy for him, and he felt more like a caretaker than a boyfriend. Enter the other woman. Joe met a new colleague 7 months into our relationship and quickly became friends with her. She was beautiful and smart, and they clearly had chemistry. I felt threatened immediately, but tried to play it cool so that I didn't come off possessive or insecure. That didn't last long. Eventually, I did express my discomfort with their closeness. He would tell me things about her that I felt were too personal for them to be discussing, and I could tell they were forming an emotional bond. For months this went on. I was so stressed, I tried communicating my feelings and was met with defensiveness and was told I needed to seek therapy. So I did. I went to counseling for 4 months, and that's all we talked about. Still, my feelings persisted, but I trusted when he told me nothing was going on between them. Finally, one night, he left his phone unattended. I seized the opportunity and found text messages between them that confirmed all my fears. This was incredibly shocking and painful. Shaking and nauseous, I told him what I found and sheepishly apologized for looking at his phone. Scared he was going to be mad at me for doing so. Oh my gosh. We're going to talk about that. His reaction was intense. He wasn't angry with me, but instead was overwhelmed and ashamed that he had been caught. I started to pack my things, and he started throwing a tantrum, running his head into the door and shouting in distress. I was worried his roommate would call the cops, so I stopped what I was doing to calm him down. Long story short, I stayed with him. He seemed genuinely sorry and scared to lose me. He cut off all contact with this woman and took accountability for everything. I took all of this as a sign that maybe we could rebuild. I felt we had something worth recovering, but mostly I think I was just too attached to let go. I hate loss, and I will do anything to avoid it. Yeah. The problem is, even though I chose to stay, I never really forgave him. I could not let the betrayal go. It was such a blow to my already low self-esteem that I fell limp in the relationship and turned cold and resentful and critical towards him. He was patient and understanding. I truly do believe he never stepped out of bounds again, but my paranoia and insecurity got turned up 100 notches. Well, he isolated and stopped building his business. Later that year, we moved in together to a new state where he accepted a job offer. I felt incredibly closed off and stressed. Cohabitation is another major trigger for me, and I was full of doubt the whole time, wondering if I was making the wrong choice, terrified I was going to get hurt again. Meanwhile, he was there, present and available with an open heart, trying his best to prove he was safe, that our relationship was secure, that he loved me and wanted me and was in it for the long haul. I just stewed in my contempt for him, still feeling deeply betrayed and scanning for any sign of danger. The danger, however, was right under my nose. I was clearly still closed off, grew very controlling, and was super emotionally reactive. I rejected a lot of his bids for connection and created quite the eggshell atmosphere. I focused on all the things I felt he wasn't doing right. It became clear our relationship was in trouble. Little did I know, he had picked up his old drug habit due to how miserable he felt. He confessed to me 5 months later. Ugh. I handled it gently and supported him and told him we needed to get him help, even though the news crushed the little amount of trust I've developed for him. How could he have hid this from me for so long? What else is he capable of hiding from me? And again, I focused on what he was doing wrong, why he was bad and not trustworthy, without acknowledging how I was possibly contributing to his desire to escape. He sought therapy, but when I asked him weeks later if he was still using, he confessed he was, and he continued to until our relationship ended a few months later. I feel my insecurity, my unwillingness to trust him, and my critical and controlling nature all created an environment that hindered our connection and made him want to cheat and use drugs. Ah, yes, I know that thought. I know his actions are ultimately on him, and if he wanted to escape so bad, he should have let me go in the first year together. Still, I can't help but think that if I had done more on my end to create a loving, safe relationship, instead of solely expecting him to do so, we would have maybe saved our connection that I was so afraid of losing. Where did I go wrong, Anna? Choose him in the first place, not leave him when I discovered his cheating, or for being cold and hyper-vigilant and unwilling to trust or appreciate him. An imperfect but mostly good person who had made some mistakes, but was doing his best to make amends for them. I'm so sad and so scared I ruined a good thing. Please help me see clearly so I know what to do differently in the future. Okay, Delia, I got you. You know, I just relate to you a lot. If you know my story, I've been in similar situations, and I know how they just cloud your mind and emotions are running the show. We know that that's literally what goes on in the brain of traumatized people who were traumatized as kids. It's not your fault. Very hard to reason things out. The thing about being in a terrible relationship is that you end up withdrawing from your friends. Like, you didn't mention friends here, but the fact that you didn't mention them and then you moved to another place and you were unhappy, it sounds like you were very alone. When you're very alone and you don't have people you can be honest with about what's going on, you can really go pretty far down the rabbit hole of what the story you're telling yourself about why this relationship is in trouble. So first, I just want to say, you did not ruin this relationship. You stayed in it long after it was ruined and long after you couldn't stand the guy. That's what happened. And you have an attachment to him that's very hard to deal with because it triggers your abandonment wounds. But this was not a good situation. You list all these great adjectives. You're sort of going into this remorseful thing about what a great guy he is. But I just want to tell you, like, there's so many things you told me that he is not a great guy. He has serious problems and he lies about them. Like, You could sort of say, oh, good people have problems like addiction. True. But it's the lying. It's the lying that pushes it over the top, completely 100% out of the realm of a workable relationship. You guys aren't married. It's not like you're married, you have a long history of things being okay and solid, and then, the drugs kicked in. This is dating. Okay? The reason you date is to find out if somebody is a suitable person for you to be with. And just for 100 reasons, he's not. No matter how intelligent or funny or how much he stuck around and tried to care for you. I think your thinking is very distorted, and I think a day will come when a whole lot of other stuff you told me, you're going to be like, well, yeah, it was really fun, except actually I was miserable the whole time, which is not fun. So I think you're sort of second guessing yourself. The actual experience of you, right? You, Delia, being in this relationship sucked. It was just miserable. And a lot of times, if you have nothing else to go on to evaluate, like, does it suck? It's like, well, does it? Are you miserable all the time? And I know what you mean, like when you're carrying around trauma, you can sort of turn things terrible and toxic with fear and resentment. And that is why I'm always talking about these daily practice techniques. Because all people, everything that's ruined in this world is ruined by people who are fearful and resentful. You can start changing your fate by having less of that. And I use these techniques. It's called the Daily Practice. It's free. You can download it. It's always down in the description section, okay? I talk about it all the time. Lots and lots of people take it every day, and then they come to free Zoom calls with me. You can too, if you want to learn how to do this. The fear and resentment needs to go somewhere, because here's the thing. Those of us who had trauma as kids, we have difficulty neurologically processing our emotions and thoughts. They literally get backed up in there. Processing means we make meaning of them, we put them downstream, into a memory perhaps, but not like something actively knocking around our minds. There's a lot going on in there. And it feels like that, right? That's what CPTSD is like. There's just a lot of thinking and feeling, and it's competing and it's loud, and you can't really make sense of things. So you start moving your fearful and resentful thoughts out of your mind onto paper, down the stream of life, and have space to be perceptive about what's going on in your present life. And in your recent life as well. Like, perspective is something that we cannot get when our senses and memory is just overwhelmed with a bunch of impressions and feelings. So you're getting a lot of mixed emotions about this, and that's normal. Everything that you're describing is normal. You didn't tell me about your childhood, but I can tell something happened for you to have this insecure attachment. But insecure attachment is not a weapon for you to use against yourself to pretend. You are kidding yourself. Your insecure attachment isn't why you were jealous or paranoid. It's because he was lying to you. It wasn't, you might have insecure attachment, which made you latch on and bond with somebody who is really not good partner material because they lie so much, because they're not really emotionally available. No matter how nice he was for you, the fact that he was using drugs and lying to you about it for months, he wasn't there. You're telling yourself this story that he was there for you. He was so great. I was just me. And it's like, no. Somebody who is high all the time and lying to you about it, everything is a lie. Everything is a lie. There's very little real stuff that gets through there. Sure, there's some love, but everything that you talk about with the future, every explanation for stuff you worry about, everything is a lie. And it doesn't tend to go well. When somebody is in recovery, they are busy straightening things out. He was busy messing things up, lying, covering things up. I suspect that over time you're going to find out that a lot of other things he told you were not true either. And it's going to be hard to face that, but in a way it's going to be wonderful and freeing to just go, okay, that is why everything felt wrong to me. I mean, you're saying I ruined a good thing. You didn't ruin a good thing. You're saying from the very beginning you felt like something was off. So you have the right perception there, but you have this other part of you that second guesses yourself and thinks, I can't trust that. It must just be me. It's because I'm insecure attached and I'm a bad person and I'm a B word and, you think it's all this stuff. And we're all complicated people. We are all those things occasionally, some of the time. But what was going on in this relationship was predominantly that, he was just lying, right? Everything just went on and on. And you sent me a little postscript here where you said, P.S. I feel like it's worth mentioning that he reconnected with the other woman shortly after we parted ways, which at first filled me with rage and self-righteousness. And finally, I had proof that he sucked and he wasn't trustworthy. Okay. And I was right about him all along, but I know that's not the whole picture, and I'd be doing myself a disservice to stay at that conclusion. I realize that you have a capacity to see what is beautiful. I mean, every person is beautiful, even when they're completely high and lying and cheating on you. There is beauty to them. They're God's creation. But he sucks. I'm sorry, he just does. And the thing is, you might feel jealous about this woman, but she's just inherited a terrible basket of problems and is not going to be fun for her. You're the one who won the prize of getting free of this relationship. I really want to suggest to you for you to get in touch with what you actually need and want in a relationship. This needs to be written down. And I'm going to suggest you take my dating course. It's always linked down in the description section below. But I think you might want to take that because it will walk you through the process of getting very clear about naming, like, what do you actually want? What sort of partner is suitable? And may I suggest to you, as I needed to do because of my blind spot about drug addiction in partners, that you just, when you define the qualities of the partner who you want in the future, that a total deal breaker is lying, that a total deal breaker is drug use, all right? And also recently getting out of a relationship or recently getting off drugs or drinking or anything. Recently being off drugs or alcoholism is barely anything, It takes years for somebody who's had that problem to discover whether they're actually going to make it. And sadly, most people, at any given time that they quit, it doesn't stay that way. And you do not want to be in there. You're in the dating phase. Dating is to see if somebody is good for being with in the long haul, for marrying. So, you need to be very clear, like, this will not work for the long haul. And when somebody, we've been talking about this lately, the Maya Angelou quote, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So that's what you got. And you have just been given a whole bunch of criteria of stuff that has to be like a big deal breaker. No way. You can make 200 things like that. They're not all deal breakers. Some of them are must-haves. Some of them would be nice to have. And some of them would be like, I sort of like blue eyes or brown eyes or, it's okay. It's not super important. And you can write all that down, what you actually like. But specifically, the first thing you do is, what do you want your life to be like? And I'm going to guess you do not want your life to be a situation, just a constant tsunami of fear and doubt and questioning. And are we even on? Or is he seeing somebody? Like, that is not what you want for your life. Imagine being happy and free and nobody's trying to mess with you like that. When you're single, it's like that. And when you finally do find somebody that you want to be with, that you just feel really supported by them. And there's no BS like this, no lying. And in fact, when you're feeling confused about life, like, it's so good to have a partner who you can go to and go, am I reading this correctly? What is your take on this? Like, somebody whose opinion you trust. So important in anyone close to you, certainly a partner. So I want to encourage you to do that. And the dating course, it's all online, and it starts there, and then it goes through like what's been the pattern and talks about all these ways that we kid ourselves and keep ending up with people who are literally unavailable or emotionally unavailable or unworkable. And when you can start to like shine a light on that and go, you know what, I've done this before and I see the pattern now, then you can start to really define what needs to be different for you in the future. And then the course includes something that I teach called structured dating, which is where you don't rush in anymore. It's sometimes even though your emotions are just like, I want to go all the way real fast, you make yourself go slow, and so that you have time to get information and to learn about the person and to make reasonable decisions about incrementally getting closer to them and letting them in your life. And it's wonderful because, a lot of people, might get to a couple of dates and you see the problem, it doesn't match what you're looking for, and you can end it right then and it's not painful. And you can actually stop wasting time and filling up your life and your, beautiful availability to date with people who really can't do anything with that gift. They're just going to mess it up and create a bunch of pain and scarring for you emotionally. So don't let that happen anymore. I make it sound easy, right? I know it's easier said than done, but you can do it. I've done it. So you might want to check that out. I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. I'll put it right here, in fact. You can go there and check out the course if you're interested, and I will see you very soon.